Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second module in the technology toolkit that we launched back in January this year. We talked about a toolkit for community finance that we were going to roll out through the course of this year and probably roll out into next year as well. This module is specifically about digital strategies, and it comes off the back of the survey that we ran, where we asked where people felt that they were going to be, where they were going to be with technology in their business in the next 5 years. 92% of respondents said that technology was either going to be pivotal to the success of your business or was going to be significantly used more widely. However, of those 92%, fewer than 50% had a current IT strategy in place. And there were 10% who said that they would love to have an IT strategy, but they just didn't know where to start. And so that's why we're launching this as the foundational module in the toolkit. And we've deliberately moved the language from IT strategy to digital strategy because we want to emphasize that this isn't about servers, networks, communication devices, but it's about how you engage with your consumers digitally, how you use technology to make smarter lending or business decisions, and how you use technology to improve the efficiency, the effectiveness of your business. And in short, it's how you use technology to enable your business strategy and how you use it to realize your business ambitions. So I'm really excited today to welcome a series of fantastic presenters who are here to help us through this webinar and this module. And we're going to kick off with a piece that is going to be front to back overview of digital strategies. And Nathan from Digital Wonderlab is going to explain what digital strategies are, why they're important, and how you go about developing a digital strategy for your business. He's going to share some of the methodologies and approaches that he uses with his clients and share some hints and tips. And one of his clients, James Berry from Bristol Credit Union, is going to give us some of the experiences that he had when working with Nathan on his digital strategy last year. We're then going to move up north and we're going to go to Liverpool to Enterprise Credit Union, where Karen is going to talk to us with Paul Rooney from Constituent Associates, and they worked together last year to develop their digital strategy, and we're going to hear some of the experiences that they had and some of the contrasting experiences with Bristol. Then we're going to move into Q&A, and so please do submit your questions throughout the presentation, and we will endeavour to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar. Those that we don't get to, we'll follow up with separately. But it doesn't stop here. Nathan and Digital Wonderlab have developed an ebook that has been developed specifically for this toolkit, and Nathan will share with you how you can access that ebook later after this webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nathan, who'll take us through the first part of this webinar. Nathan.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. So from myself, I'm Nathan Barowski. I'm from Digital Wonderlab, and my aim is to hopefully give you a whistle-stop tour of the world of digital strategy and how to develop a meaningful digital strategy. I guess kind of to start and to, I guess, contextualize why I'm here. So my role within Digital Wonderlab is I am a lead strategist and solution architect, and we've been working with social enterprises to help them to use digital better to realize their goals, either through designing and creating and implementing solutions, all the way from strategy to delivery of apps and integrated websites. And as Jonathan mentioned, we've been recently working with Bristol Credit Union to deliver their digital architecture and 5-year digital strategy. For me, in essence, digital is something simply that I love. I think the world can be solved in terms of any problem through digital, but digital does need purpose and it has a place. And I think digital, which is firmly grounded in social activity, is where it can do great positive impact. As Jonathan mentioned, we have an ebook which will be available on Friday, and you can get a copy of it by simply emailing me at nathanb@digitalwonderlab.com, and we'll send over a copy to you on Friday once it's released. Hopefully, what I'm going to share is of use and helps you on that journey to understand how to begin to develop your digital strategy. But at the same time, if you do have any questions, I love a good coffee, even if it's virtual, and I'm happy to talk digital at any point. So do feel free to get in touch. So what is digital and why has it become so important to us? I think first off, really we need to begin with the comment around why digital over IT. And I purposely use that because traditionally IT has been something which is talked about in terms of computers, servers, help desks, probably a few systems. And digital is more than IT. We can define it as something that is meeting the expectations of our stakeholders. They are both internal and external in a digital age. And therefore, our digital strategy is about exploring and understanding our relationships with and use of digital to enable our customers and organizational needs in relation to people, process, and technology. And that's really important. IT and tech is simply technology. If we put purpose behind it and we put it behind a need, we end up with something much more powerful. And that's something that's really important as we go through this. I can't iterate more and more. Now, why is that so important? Well, fundamentally, we are now firmly in a fourth industrial revolution, which is grounded in digital. We're, however, in a transition area, and that area is one which does have a significant divide. There are those that are firmly ahead, living in a world where digital is their default. They get it, they love it, and they want to engage. And there's those that are clearly lagging behind and not quite sure what to engage in or that they can engage. But there is a huge amount in the middle, which is simply just getting by. And we've seen that, although COVID has shown us that many have access to digital and can use digital, and we can do things wonderfully with digital, as we are here on this talk today, still many don't have the right digital tools or the capability in order to access the technology they need to in order to do what they need to do. And our digital strategies need to reflect that. You need to reflect in the way that our customers want us to engage with us, but also reflect in the need of our staff and the people that we engage with internally in order to engage with technology in the right way. That said, digital is here and it is here to stay. And I think that debate kind of needs to move on. And our customers expect us to and want to be able to engage with us and access services in the way they need to. They expect that to be easy, simple, and done in a secure manner. As organizations, our boards and our trustees expect us to be able to use digital to deliver what we're doing in the way we're doing efficiently and effectively, to be able to get from A to B faster, more costly, effective, and also to do so with the right level of human touch. We want to make sure that our teams are adding value and simply don't become digital paper shufflers where we're just moving data from one part to another. And that's the reality. Digital is here to help us to do that. So with that in mind, what makes a good digital strategy? Well, fundamentally, any digital strategy should be firmly grounded in your organizational strategy. Whatever that need is, asking the question of what is it that digital can do to enable us to realize those goals, but also to realize those goals and allow us to think differently about what we're trying to do. Digital should open up new opportunities to different services and products, as well as the way that we do our work. We do that through forming a very clear digital vision for all of our stakeholders that goes beyond the current, but also explores future trends. We also do that by looking beyond the near term into the long horizon to understand what is coming downstream that might help us to understand our future strategies and how we might be able to engage. And finally, we set out a clear journey. A broad set of themes will take you from today to where you might be heading. Typically, a digital strategy is looking at a 2 to 3 year horizon and needs to balance the opportunity between cost of not doing with the appetite for change, as well as, unfortunately, the reality of budget and affordability of doing those changes. A good strategy, if it covers those things, will do wonders for you. So how do you do it? Having conversations around digital is definitely difficult and often can be quite confusing at times. We're certainly often left with that feeling of kind of, I'm not quite sure that I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not sure what I know is what I should know. So we can find at points that actually bringing in people like myself or Paul to help to support helps to enable us to do that better. However, if we're a little bit curious about digital, we can begin to explore our relationship with it and the one that we want with it. By understanding relationships and understanding our relationship with digital and the things that we want to be able to do with it and how we want it to enable us and our stakeholders, we can begin to deepen our understanding and capability of digital. That, simply put, is digital maturity. Maturity, however, isn't binary. We can't suddenly become digitally mature or that we're digitally immature, but rather that we continually deepen our understanding and refine our understanding and alignment of our current and future worlds with digital advancements. What may be advanced and leading today might not so be in 2 to 3 years. Just take, for example, perhaps our relationship or our understanding of artificial intelligence and the use of machine learning in supporting our organizations. No doubt many of us are probably at a very early awareness of that and not seeking to advance too far with it today. So digital maturity is simply a framework. It's a wonderful framework which allows us to have conversations. It's a means to guide rather than it is necessarily to say what you should or shouldn't do. It allows you to understand your current space and where you futurely would like to get to, using a simple rating of 1 to 5, where 1 is about awareness and 5 is leading. And I say, kind of, when we think about that, if you walked into the, I don't know, local Apple store, and when you're in that store, you're understanding that actually all these people around me can walk up to a guru bar and they're called gurus. They obviously know their stuff. And I would expect them to be leading in terms of understanding of all the things to do with Apple products. But if I walked into I don't know, a general store in Asda, for example, and they are looking to sell Apple products, would I expect them to be sector leading? Possibly not. And it's the same framework and ability with that. The wonderful thing with digital maturity models is they can be tailored to our own needs, and in addition to that, they can be drilled down into a much more granular level. It can be used at a whole organizational perspective, within teams, within departments, in order to understand what is important to us and how do we measure where we want to be against our current position as well as our ambition. They're useful for conversations, and I can't iterate that enough. I find that they're a useful way of understanding that everyone is looking at things through the right lens. And typically, a digital maturity model is looking to understand 6 domains. The customer, what is their need? How do you engage with them? How do you understand the insight that you're trying to gain from those customers? What is your strategic digital thinking like today, and where would you like that to be? What is your culture in terms of digital leadership, skills, and change? How are services and products delivered digitally? Organizationally, how effective are you, and how is digital being played out within that effectiveness? And then finally, and most importantly, you would have noted all of those are not necessarily technological. The final one is around tech. And that's talking around your systems, your data, your security, and your infrastructure. What is in place? Where does that need to be? And that will mean different things to different organizations. For many, as you are financial institutions, security and security of data is going to be absolutely key. And therefore, there needs to be an elevated level to that. But it doesn't mean that necessarily you need to be at cutting edge and the bleeding edge of maybe what a large international institution might need as a bank. but we need to have levels of security around them. Everything around digital maturity is within the ebook and is broken down into a whole series of steps and guides to take you through that and how you might explore that. I don't have time today to go through that in full detail, but give you a view on that within there. So if we use that framework, we can begin to build out our strategy into 5 very simple steps to get from A to B to C. And the first step is a really simple one in many respects. It's where are you today? What is the current landscape that we're sitting in? What does that look like? Thinking about it in relation to people, process and technology. What is it that you have today? Is it any good? Is it not fit for purpose? What are those barriers and challenges? And are there any underlying risks that we need to be aware of? It should be an evidence-based process. We should be looking to understand the facts of it, not necessarily our opinions, but understanding actually where our goals are and are there barriers, and some really simple kind of RAG rating processes to understand where are the major concerns that we have. As we then move into step 2, it's a very simple process of trying to build a future vision and some guiding principles. That future vision is one which needs to be balanced between your customers' needs. So what is their expectation on you and where do we see that being placed, as well as your organizational goals and objectives. And so we'd ask 3 questions really. What is it that you're seeking to achieve and how can digital help you to do that? What is it your customers need from you and what is it digital needs to do to support that? And thirdly, what are the opportunities that digital might enable us to do that we're not doing? If we get that right, we can then begin to paint a really clear picture of our future intent. And then we can set out some principles to help us to meander the never-ending challenge of the digital world to understand how will we make decisions and how will we know that we're guiding ourselves in the right path. We don't get lost along the way. Some examples of guiding principles, areas that typically we'd see would be things around integration of systems, so they're not isolated, information flows well, data security, access, choice, understanding technological debt, so making sure that we don't make choices around things where we're then left with an excessive cost or we can't move in the medium to short term. But also making sure that things are benefit driven, don't just do things for tax's sake, and that we really understand the people that are going to be using the systems, that they're right and they work for us in the right way. Get all that right and we set ourselves out into good space, we can then start to say, okay, so what's out there? What are we not seeing that we need to be looking at? And so a really important step is to step back and say, actually, well, what is happening in the wider world? Looking both internally at other organizations within your sector and akin to your organization at size and in space, but also looking more widely to allied sectors and to completely different sectors. What is going on in those areas and how might that inform our strategy? Really importantly, this piece is absolutely key in understanding where we may need to be in 5 years' time. What's coming down the pipeline that is going to inform us of what we might need to do in the next 2 years, because it could take us a year or 2 to then adopt and deliver that. And I'd just say, think cloud. How long have we having conversations about whether we need to be in the cloud or not? What is cloud and how do we move there? And actually, when was it that we actually then moved to the cloud in order to achieve that? That's a good example of that. So things which are probably more closely aligned in this space would be the cryptocurrencies. Where are they? And they're big in the US, not so big here, but they're coming. What might we be doing with that? And does that offer an opportunity for us? Or is it a threat? Or is it something we just need to have a little watching brief on? Artificial intelligence and fraud detection, Internet of Things, whatever may be the next Monzo. Facebook are interestingly coming into the finance space. What might that mean? What might they be doing that could be disrupting the market? What can we learn from that? So using things like PESTLEs are really important. They help us to kind of just assess the market and understand what's out there. But as they kind of go broad, go wide, and say, okay, how does that help us and what does that inform to us? From there, then we can kind of start to then set out our ambitions. And we can try to understand actually what is it that we're trying to achieve and what might that look like. A strategic theme would be like any strategic theme within your normal strategy, but it's got a digital slant. It should cover the same domains as we probably would have within a maturity model, but particularly it does need to consider your customer experience, your operational effectiveness. And I would say as community finance organizations that you really think about the community engagement and impact you're delivering and what's the role that digital will play in doing that, be that data capture and insight intelligence or delivering clear impact out through other services. Each theme really just needs to be able to build out a clear intent, be clear about it from an objective position, and be clear about the outcomes that you're trying to deliver. It's not about trying to build out a detailed plan or to say that we must do X, Y, and Z project or be technology led in any way. It's very much about what will we now achieve and how will that look. As a reader, I should be able to understand from those themes your intent and your ambition and how that relates back to your organizational strategy. By doing X, we'll become more operational effectiveness, which will therefore save us this amount of money. It's got a clear link back in. And the final step then, and by no means the smallest step in the process, is very much to drive forward in terms of the delivery. And the delivery process itself really needs to form into a few things. Firstly, we need to build out a roadmap. So how will we get now from today to where we want to be? And really importantly within digital, I would say that it's not so much about building big, long, complex program plans and spending hours and hours trying to understand how will we get from today 3 years ahead. But it is about understanding some key dependencies and understanding the timings and sequencing of things. And it's really important to think about that in two areas. Firstly, what are your organizational objectives and where are they planned to be? If you've got an intent to deliver something out into the world in 12 months' time, if you need digital behind that, you might have had to start delivering that within the next 3 months in order to meet that 12-month objective. So it's really important to think about those timings, or that organizational objective is going to need to go back 6 months because we actually need 6 months to then go out and find something on the market. So it's really important to think about those dependencies between digital delivery and your organizational outcomes that you're trying to achieve. We'd always say it's worth, when you're road mapping, to think about initiatives, grouping things up, but also making sure that you work in quarters rather than in months or in weeks, in order to help to kind of think about where things lie and to think about your initiatives in terms of defining. So what is it we're trying to achieve and how are we going to go about achieving this? That could be all the way through to finding an appropriate provider or understanding what it is that we're going to do. Then into delivering. How long is it going to take us to do this and what do we need to do in order to achieve that? That could be a few months into a quarter, or it could be multiple years. But really importantly, do not forget the embedding process. Change, in any change, takes time, and digital change particularly, we need to think about staff embedment as well as customer embedment and allowing the time for that to be put in before we run off and do the next thing. So always allow a good chunk of time to do that. And then once we've built that roadmap, it's really important to assess that roadmap for risk. Make sure that we understand within that roadmap, what have we made assumptions around? Are there any glaring gaps? And fundamentally then, how will we now deliver this? In concern with delivering is two parts. One, governance and steering. How will we enable ourselves to make the decisions we need to make? And particularly where things are competing or challenging, how will we decide what we're going to be doing and who will be involved in that? Second part is, who's going to be delivering this work? How are we going to achieve this? Are you going to be bringing people in to support this? Are you going to be skilling up staff to doing this or removing them from day job? Or is it part of someone's role anyway in order to achieve that? That's really important. We need to ask ourselves the question of, do they have the skills to do this? Have they worked in change before? Have they not worked in change before? Rather than just lumping something on someone and understanding they can get there easily. Once we've got that in place, it's then mobilizing. And like anything, if we were starting a new initiative, or if we were first day into a role, we'd expect someone to go through some sort of orientation or induction, and we need to go through the normal group dynamics of forming and storming and norming in order to perform. And the same is with digital teams. I think particularly where you're bringing externals in, or you're working as a new team in a different way, it's really important to allow that dynamic, but also to set those rules. How will you govern this project? What methodology are we following? In order to make sure everyone knows what they're doing and how they're going to work. Things like Teams and Slack are fantastic tools to allow us to collaborate across projects and also allow people to come together virtually in order to support them. At the same time, we need to make sure that everyone understands the rules of that and that they know what they're doing and where things are. Otherwise, you're back to the same challenge of, I don't know what I don't know, I don't know where it is. So a few final thoughts for you. I appreciate it's been a whistle stop view through, but there's a few things that I would always say are really important. So never stop asking, how can digital create a better experience or deliver our need for us better? Never stop asking that question, no matter if you have it in place or not. Never assume that people know or that you know better. Ask and test. If a piece of technology is being looking to be put into in order to support our members, test, ask what members want. Don't assume that you know what they want. If you're putting a piece of technology in order to help employees better engage around absence management and deliver through HR, talk to them about that. Talk to HR about it. Don't assume that we have to do it and this one is better than that one. How do we engage people in that work? But also recognize that what works for one organization may not work for your organization. So don't assume because John down the road did that and their organization got it and it's been a great success, that if we put that in, it's going to be a great success. There's definitely an alignment there, but not necessarily a full alignment. Look inside as well as outside your sector and to other organizations for inspiration. I think it's really important. Lots of people are doing some really great things with tech and with digital, and there's lots to learn from it. And I think that's an area where you can never get bored of looking, but also be a little bit more lateral with your thinking on that and seeing actually what worked, but also what didn't work. Some fantastic stories of things failing. Why did that fail? We definitely don't want to do that. Digital moves quickly, so be sure what you're implementing can move and grow with you and not leave you stuck. And that's really important. Too often we make choices around big systems particularly, and it leaves us in a path where we can never move away. And you're left on this trundling treadmill of roadmap development via a supplier and not necessarily able to flex or move. So think about it from your own ambition, and will this technology grow with us? Do they have the level of investment that would support your type of ambition that you have? Often the case is that they do, but we need to make sure that that's valid and appropriate for what you're looking to do. If you're not sure, get help from others. Talk to your peers, talk to other allied organizations, or talk to people like myself and Paul. But get help in order to understand those areas, and don't be afraid to ask. Finally, be realistic. I've seen so many plans where everything is needs to be delivered in the first 12 months, and somehow we've got this huge ambition, and it all can be done, it's fine. And the reality is it takes time to embed and deliver. So do allow for some sort of consistency between those activities. And finally, really important, allow time for change to be embedded. Our world, although digital can do many things, it is still very much a human-orientated technology piece, and tech and people need time to come together. And although as a project team you might be working on something day in, day out and think this is great, your end users won't have seen it and they'll need time to adapt and be able to support that. But also if you're taking something out into the wider world for your members and future customers, then there's an element there where your teams need to be able to support that, and they need a good high level of confidence in order to support that. Otherwise, as you push it out, they're not going to know how to support it, and you're left with a wake of chaos in the back office where people are really just wanting to help. So recognizing that, but also, and it's not on there, but I would highly recommend, is that you celebrate your outcomes and your successes. Too often in digital transformation and these types of activities, we move from project to project to project, and you're never actually at a point of just actually recognizing where have we got to, where are we now heading, and celebrating in that opportunity. Because one thing that is constant is change, and it enables us therefore to recognize in that shift and that maturity as we step through. So finally, end on really from me is just to say thank you very much for the time. As I mentioned, we have an ebook which goes into a lot more depth in relation to this, and you can grab a copy by sending me an email at the address on screen there. So thank you very much, and look forward to chatting in the Q&A later.
Thank you very much, Nathan. That was really fantastic overview of digital strategies, particularly the it's just worth re-emphasizing that you can so quickly and easily find yourself being technology led. If you don't take the step back and follow a process, follow a methodology of developing your digital strategy, you could find yourself following the roadmap of your technology supplier, or you could find yourself just being attracted by the latest shiny fintech that comes knocking on your door. So really important messages coming through that. So thanks again, Nathan. I just want to let everyone know that we are recording this. We're going to make it available, and we'll let everyone know in the next day or so where it is, so that you can access it on YouTube. And we've got a session at the end of this on Q&A, so please do keep your questions coming in. But for now, we're going to move over to James at Bristol Credit Union to talk about his side of developing the digital strategy. James, you're on mute.
Having joked about the chances of being on mute earlier, how ironic that there we are. I'm talking away whilst on mute. Thanks, Jonathan. Good morning, everybody. I'll start again. I thought I'd just step back a little bit to talk you through how we set about developing our first digital strategy, which we've since been able to iterate through our work with Nathan and the team at Digital Wonderlab into what's now a very comprehensive roadmap for the next few years. I thought it'd be worth starting at the beginning now. And firstly, I'd just say that the important thing for us really was to set digital in the context of our overall strategy. So we set out around 4 years ago to understand what was going to put us in the best position to serve our members and communities in the long term. And really from starting to think about those questions, we concluded that we needed to grow the loan book significantly more quickly than we had been. And we, most importantly of all, needed to increase income at a faster rate than we were going to increase costs. And having accepted that, we said, well, we need to change how we do things then, because if we continue to grow and do things in exactly the same way as we've always done them, we'll continue to get the same outcomes, of course. We'll continue to grow costs in line with the way that they've been grown hitherto. We also found out about the same time that members were increasingly accessing our services via their mobile phone. You know, we were all sat there in the credit union office happily using a PC, looking at our website on a PC and all those other things that we did day to day. But when we looked at the data and looked at what Google Analytics in particular was telling us, we found that 80% of members were accessing our website from a mobile device of one sort or another. And our web presence wasn't great. It wasn't great full stop, but it particularly wasn't great at being responsive to people's different devices that they were using. So to enable us to become more efficient and to make us more attractive to potential borrowers, we decided that investment in IT was going to be critical. We then took what was probably our old school kind of what should we do next step, which many of you might have done too, which is to go out and have a look at what the vendors who supply core platforms had on offer and what was potentially available for credit unions or for community lenders like us. So we did that. We looked at the market. It was interesting, but it didn't really give us any clear answers about which route to go down. So we took another step back and said, well, hang on a minute. Why don't we try and figure out first exactly what we're looking for? And to do that, we decided to work to develop some principles about what we wanted and how we thought we could best manage our digital future for our members. And the principles that we came up with were that we were going to be customer led. So we weren't interested at all in taking what we already did and making it quicker. So having a crap long form that we expected people to fill in and give us their inside leg measurement and their favorite color and all the other things that we'd built up over the years in terms of what we asked people to tell us about, we kind of threw all that away and said, let's start from first principles and start with what we really need to know and how we can make it as easy as possible to get people to use the things that we've got. We needed to be connectable and to be able to connect. So no closed box systems, but open to connectivity to other platforms that help us to do what we need to do. And of course, we needed to have the best security and resilience that we could afford. We had a couple of shoulds there as well. I don't know if you remember when Nathan was running through his presentation, he talked about must, should, and could. So they were our must principles. We also had a couple of shoulds. So we should be open source or widely developed. So we're not tied to any particular vendor where possible. And we should give ourselves as much future proofing as possible. And either that we were able to take out components that we used to build our ecosystem and replace them with others as we need to, and that the whole ecosystem itself is continually developed, whether by a crowd because it's open source or by a major player who's putting lots of investment into their platform. So those principles were how we decided we would look for the technology, but of course they had to be in the context as well of our overall business goals. Otherwise we'd have a great set of principles but no connection to what we actually had to do. So we agreed specific, measurable, time-bound results that we wanted to see through our digital work, and then use this new strategic framework to select suppliers, to select components, and to select partners to build our new ecosystem, which we launched last November. Since then, we've built out the digital strategy even further. So we've now got a really clear view of the next steps that we want to go on to in the future and how they support our overall strategy of growth. And we can also got a much clearer idea of what resources we need if we're going to deliver the things that are on our development roadmap. And really, it does come back to starting with the vision, with the principles, and with the business goals, and fitting that in the context of the overall organizational strategy as well. Digital isn't a standalone thing that you can go off and change the world with, except with the purpose of giving yourself the things that you need to do to deliver your overall mission. Some final thoughts before we let Paul and Karen give you the benefit of their wisdom, which I'm really looking forward to. Get advice, so it can be paid for, and we have had great support from Nathan and team at Fair for All. Sorry, not Fair for All. We've had great support from Fair for All as well. Jonathan's been good, but from Digital Wonderlab. But we've also had lots of advice from lots of other folks as well. Loads of people who'll help for free or for a coffee. So I spoke to local fintech experts, local digital consultants, to the folks in the universities who are involved in this area. And I always asked them as the last thing, who else would they recommend that I talked to? And could they introduce me to that person as well? And there are so many people who'll give half an hour to an hour just to talk through their view of the world, their view of technology and where things are going. And I think it's really important to get that broader perspective on the world to the extent that you can do. Have a strategy, so that statement of intent and the framework to make decisions from, because that's essential in order to have a good plan and a good delivery roadmap. And it really does have to be your strategy and not your supplier's strategy. Suppliers can go in different ways. They have their own ideas about things that work or don't work. They have their own idiosyncrasies, like I don't believe in APIs, as one of our core platform suppliers famously said. It really needs to be your strategy and your outcomes that you want to see delivered through it. And I think finally, just really a most important thing is to remember that people are an absolutely vital part of any digital strategy. Without bringing people along on the journey, whether that's staff, whether it's the board, other stakeholders and customers and members, then all the technology in the world isn't going to do you any good at all. Because without the people to make it work, without the people believing in it, explaining it, using it, the technology itself is just a bunch of stuff in a corner. So that's my thoughts. Hopefully that's some use to folks. If anybody's got any questions or wants to discuss it further, do please feel free to link in with me through LinkedIn or to drop us an email. I'm always very happy to share what we've done and how we've found things. Thank you all this morning.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, James. Great to hear the perspective from the credit union as to how it felt and what was important. And it's so important just to keep an open mind, keep talking to lots of people, and keeping it alive. So I'm now going to take us up to Enterprise Credit Union, where Karen and Paul will take us through their experiences last year of developing their digital strategy. Over to you.
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. I'm here today joined with Paul Rooney, who is the constituent with Managing Director, beg your pardon, with Constituent Association. I want to begin by just saying I'm thanking Nathan and both James as well for those excellent presentations. I think you're going to find that I'm going to repeat everything they've said, but I'll give you a little bit of an enterprise slant on it, if I may. So Paul's going to use to share the slides, so I'm just going to ask Paul if you just go on to the next slide. So just very quickly, Enterprise Credit Union, we are a community credit union. I would say we're a very successful credit union. We're based in Liverpool, as Jonathan said. You can see there, we're doing quite well. However, we want to be bigger and we want to be better. And I suppose our challenge over the last 14 months or so has been how we do that. But I wanted just to start, and I think this echoes what Nathan said as well. On the next slide, you'll see just an extract from our business plan. We had a very, very clear business strategy. This was produced in 2018 with our board of directors. We knew where we wanted to go. We were very clear on that. I think the problem was we just didn't know how. And I want to refer to that bottom slide there. We always said in Enterprise, we want to be the Monzo of credit unions. We want to be there. We don't want to lose the branch network. We have quite a strong branch network, but we want to be there more accessible, if you like, for our members there. But as I say, the problem around improving that technology was how we're going to do that. So thanks, Paul. If you just move on to the next slide there, you'll see back in 2019 now, we went in partnership with Fair for All, and a review was done on our business. We're very, very adamant that we had a great business plan, Nathan. But a full review was done. A big thing that came out of that review was how important digital was, how important it was for us it was an enabler to allow us to achieve our business goals, and without the digital, it was just a barrier for growth. And you'll see as we go on in slides, you'll see what I mean about barriers. So how are we going to do that? So the first thing we done as Enterprise, we weren't the experts in digital or digital strategy. We're experts at credit unions, but we certainly weren't experts in the digital space there. So we engaged, we were recommended to speak to a guy called Paul Rooney, who'll be taking over shortly. So on the next slide there, you'll see, I'm going to introduce you now to Paul on the next slide, and he's going to go through a little bit of the work that constituents have done. So Paul, it's over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. It's great to join you. Can I just echo the comments Karen made? Excellent presentations from Nathan and James. An introduction to Constituent. We're a socially focused, values-based constituency, and our obligation to the credit union sector and to ethical finance is to try and support them on their digital journey. And to echo the comments that Nathan made earlier on, that includes all aspects of the organisation, not just purely the technology. So we offer a range of services, which we refer to as a professional services hub, that help social enterprise and other organisations on that organisational change journey. As Cam mentioned, our starting point was an introduction to enterprise, and what was absolutely clear is they had a clear business focus. They had a strategy that they were looking to implement, and they recognised from themselves that technology was a big component in terms of achieving their strategic objectives. Our starting point is always to emphasise the point that Nathan has made already, and we should all recognise, I suppose, after the year that we've had, is that technology is here, and when we experience technology, we actually change the way in which we transact in terms of businesses or our personal lives. You know, how many of us will actually go back post-lockdown to 100% personal interactions? So will we continue to use Zoom and Teams? Undoubtedly, to some extent, we all will. Like Digital Wonderlabs, we have a structured process that we support our clients with. We refer to the journey, and that's the experience that we have had in the year or so that we've been working with Enterprise Credit Union, is that we did that initial assessment using our diagnostic, which led to that evaluation and has resulted in a very clear digital strategy and a roadmap, which we will go on to talk about later on. But that's based alongside what you've heard already in terms of a wider maturity model, which, as you'll see, we focus on 8 different aspects in the organisational journey, technology being one component of that, but very consistent to the outline Nathan has provided. And likewise, we follow the digital methodology. It is about people, processes and technology. But the key aspect is that you work from left to right. So people and processes are the key consideration that we undertake, where technology being a focus on the enabler for achieving those strategic objectives. With that, I'll pass you back to my fabulous tag team partner to take you through some of our experiences.
Thanks, Paul. Let's just move on to the next slide there. So going back to what Paul said about, you know, the people, the processes and the technology, one thing that was absolutely key with us, you know, was engaging our members. We weren't willing to go in, you know, change any of our IT, etc. Until we started asking them what they wanted and what it looked like to them. There was no point whatsoever, you know, and that also includes the staff as well. You know, I think sort of from day one, our staff have been involved, and I want to just give you a little bit of an insight there. On our member survey, we ran a survey a couple of weeks ago, we've done a couple now, and within 24 hours we had 1,800 responses from our members, letting us know what improvements we can put on our app. We've only had our app going since November, but we're getting influx from them saying, you know, can you gamify it in some little way? And it's brilliant to get that engagement from day one with the members. I think as well there you can see we have lots of focus groups with different demographics within the membership, making sure that we're bringing in the older member as well, and ensuring we're trying to keep them abreast of what's happening there. You know, I think just on the next slide there, moving on, I want to touch quickly on processes. The next slide, we had a wonderful process map, and that's what it looked like, right? It was sort of very smooth and everything, right? If you look at that and then trying to put that in from the members, to staff point of view, the reality is this. And on the next slide, you'll see to onboard one of our members, you know, through a digital platform, you'll see there's only 51 post-it notes on there because we couldn't fit it on the slide. However, there was 70 post-it notes that we established just trying to onboard a member and what that looked like. You know, so the processes itself, while we're improving our technology, we need to make sure the processes are fit for purpose behind that. And what I mean by that is we were insisting on a lot of manual process, so we have looked at that, and we're in the process now of going through our whole processing, if you like, not just in the digital world, but making it smarter and, you know, easier for all the staff as well. You know, I think if anything, sort of the tech will help us do that. You know, it certainly will. I think one thing it's done from there, and it's a nightmare going through that, I don't mind telling you that, when you're going through the process map, and, you know, but we've come through it, and, you know, we've decided we're going to sort of enhance our processes, and we're going to go for the quality standards on that. So all of our processing that we're working on now is all around the ISO 9001. It was a standard, so it's there. So we've done some learning, if you like, away from digital on that as well. I'm going to hand you straight back because Paul's the expert here, but it's around the technology. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Karen. So, as Karen has outlined, a lot of time was taken at actually looking at the processes of Enterprise Credit Union, supported by a fantastic team there who were really up for the change journey. And their input was absolutely key, as Karen has said, in terms of the members' input as well. But what you were starting to see is that the existing technology was actually starting to hinder the progress of the operations of the credit union. And very interestingly, as organic growth developed around online portals, and subsequently, as we'll go on to discuss the app, the back office was not able to keep up. So the fact was that it meant more manual interventions. Because the system was providing very little support, the team at Enterprise Credit Union would then have to dedicate more resources towards the digital channels without actually alleviating some of the more traditional channels, such as the telephone or at the branch counter. So all of that change allowed then a gap analysis to be undertaken of what the current technology stack looks like. But of course, importantly, it was about what are the actual technology needs. And you see on the screen here, many of these items perhaps were not as pressing 5 years ago, but are certainly there in terms of the expectations of members going forward in terms of credit unions or customers in other sectors and environments. And what we were able to do then is to actually pull together a very clear set of requirements, which meant that when we went into the market and looked at what solutions might be there, we were able to assess them against what the actual needs of the organisation were based upon those people. But of course, a key aspect of that was to try and streamline the processes, as Karen has said. I mentioned very briefly there the app. One of the quick outcomes from those member sessions and speaking with staff and actually understanding what was going on in credit unions and elsewhere was the need for an app. And as you see, the app already has over 4,000 downloads in a matter of months. And actually, I think it's closer to 5,000 now, is how quickly that's been adopted. But of course, we have to look forward. And as we're looking forward, there is a need. And we're conscious of the fact that there are many fintechs and core platform providers out there all offering a range of services. And we would compliment them that many of what they offer now would actually take us a great step forward. However, we're also recognising from that clear set of business requirements that there are gaps there. And unfortunately, I suppose one of the points that we would like to get across this morning is that actually there's probably not one size fits all. It's obviously centred around the needs of your individual organisation, but also be very careful that perhaps you're not just entering into a new set of problems or a new set of additional processes if you were just to follow, as was mentioned earlier on by Nathan, just the supplier roadmap. It has to be your own roadmap. And if I could just maybe briefly give you an overview of what that looks like. So we've clearly mapped out the next 18 months for Enterprise Credit Union in terms of our digital transformation programme. And you'll see the elements that Karen has mentioned before, working with existing providers, but also actually looking in terms of where we can actually introduce new technology. But obviously, as always, underpinned by the process mapping and that constant feedback loop from members. So to conclude, I'll just pass you back to Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think so. I just come in there and to echo what James said earlier about the learnings as well. You know, I'd say it's absolutely key that you have a clear business strategy. You know, your people are the key. And when I say that, I mean your members and I mean your staff members as well. Technology is an enabler, but make sure you bring them on the journey with you, all of those members and staff as well. It's business change and people, yeah, right, people will struggle with business change, but keep them on the bus. You know, this is technology, you know, it's not a technology project, the whole change thing. Keep everyone involved. And last but not least, and Mr. Rooney can echo this, certainly with me anyway, you know, is to be patient, you know, be flexible, but absolutely stay focused. You know, we're the experts in credit union, stay focused with what you're here to do. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to hand you back to Jonathan now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you so much, Paul. That was fantastic, and it's really good to see these two very similar but contrasting approaches to the same issue, with the same focus on business and the importance of the business being the driver of the strategy, not the technology. Love that picture of the post-its, the 70 post-it notes. I am sure you're not alone, and it's quite an exercise to peel back and have a look at the detail of the process that you're actually undertaking, not just that streamlined process that you can set out on a PowerPoint slide. So now we're going to move into the Q&A. We've got 15 minutes or 20 minutes when we're going to cover off some of the questions that have been coming in. Please do keep them coming in. Going to kick off with one about digital marketing strategies. And the question is, it would be good to understand the digital marketing strategies that go alongside the journey and how they can interface with the technology platforms chosen. And Bristol Credit Union has been doing some work around digital marketing strategies. And so I'm going to ask James to pick up on this.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks for the question as well. So I think in terms of the digital marketing strategies and the way that they interact with the tech, it's clear that we need to have firstly expertise in digital marketing. So in Bristol, we've hired a digital marketing manager before we actually got the new platform in place. So we found somebody who was really skilled in, experienced in digital marketing, and we brought her onto the team to help to shape the platform before we even got started, because we wanted to make sure that as a core part of our requirements, bearing in mind that our business goal was to grow, that we were going to be able to have the technology to support that through greater marketing effort. So Amanda's been working in the background along with the team at Digital Wonderlab, along with the broader team working on the project, to help us to make sure that we've got the right digital marketing strategies in place. I think the thing that the tech really enables, though, is a lot more automation. It enables us to get much better data. We used to really struggle to track what happened to people when they arrived at our website, when we were on our old platform, and we can now track people right through from campaign to landing page on the website, right through to whether they end up with a loan or not, or whether they end up doing any of the other actions that we're targeting in terms of figuring out what happens. We can see where the drop-off points are as well, and this of course all builds up into really great intelligence about which campaigns are working or not, which allows us to optimize our spend, but also to figure out where things are going wrong and where people are struggling to get through a particular point of the process, or where different campaigns might be attracting people who are more or less likely to be able to end up with a service from us or not. So enabling that data, enabling the automation with campaigns as well, we can automatically drip feed email to people now based on what they've done in the journey to sign up and based on what happens in their account as well. All of that really helps to make the marketing just much more effective.
Thank you very much, James. I'm going to move on to a question that is, I think it's something which a large number of credit unions and CDFIs challenge with, and that is about the way that their core system interacts with other technologies that are available on the market. And so the question is, one challenge we see is the whole area of integration of existing core systems and overlaying that with a digital strategy. To that end, it would be great to hear on whether there are overlays that can be integrated or that have integrated whereby all systems join up into one system. Is there one system that does it all? We wish there were. There's a lot of work being done in this space, and this is a challenge which we come across a lot. I'm going to pass this over first to Paul to pick up on an initial response, and then hear from Nathan as well.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for the question. It's an excellent one, and it really is something that I just gave a brief point on during the presentation earlier. Unfortunately, the answer is there isn't an easy answer to actually having a platform that then would interact with other providers. It's developing, it's coming, and it's coming because the expectations of CDFIs and credit unions and other organisations are demanding it. Traditionally, the model has been that you go with one supplier, and that one supplier provides everything that you need in terms of your operations, which is very, I suppose, similar to the old Nokia phone as opposed to a smartphone. We're certainly moving to the point where you want your systems to be able to interact, but that will mean you may decide to choose, for example, which credit reference agency that you use or which open banking provider that you use. Many of the platforms at the moment will state that they offer that, and I think it's a dialogue with the suppliers, the vendors, to actually really get in behind whether or not they do have open APIs that they are willing to share with others. And certainly in our experience at Enterprise Credit Union, we found that the core platform provider was open to actually allowing us to choose our app provider, for example. So it's definitely the way forward, and I think Nathan's presentation outlines that very clearly as well, is that you have to actually be at the forefront of those types of discussion and not be reliant on what the technology supplier will say to you. But I think finally, just in terms of the excitement around many of the fintechs that are there, I think that opportunity to effectively plug and play with the suppliers you choose is going to come to fruition in the near future.
So I couldn't agree more with Paul's comments, really. I'd echo that, really. I think we need to move more away from kind of a system approach where we need a kind of all singing, all dancing, kind of the traditional sort of ERP world where we can get from end to end within a single platform into much more of an ecosystem approach. And the merit of that really is to really think about information flow and using the best tools in order to enable you to do that. But I would say there's an important bit in here around making sure you've got your data, your core data is held within a single integrated position where you can use it well. So there's not much point having a separated marketing system if you're then trying to engage and understand customer behaviors and you want to use that in order to drive things. So there is a point where you need to make sure you think about those journeys and how does the data interrelate. But ultimately, driving those conversations around open APIs. The reality is, if they don't have APIs, any database can technically be integrated into. It's not a technological problem that can't be overcome. It's more of a question of whether or not the supplier wants to enable that. In today's world, they either do it or I think they're going to die, because the reality is every piece of data now needs to be integrated, and the expectation is that we can flow information from one system to another and allow that transformation. So it should be coming, and I would echo with Paul, really driving those conversations with suppliers and really pushing them on that, really, and saying why not. And if they say they can't do it, then finding a way potentially to do that and showing that it can be done is definitely one of those ones that I would echo and push forward. The final one I say is, the world is changing dramatically, and there's a lot emerging out there, which is quite exciting and interesting, but at the same time is building much more as platform approaches. So taking things like Microsoft's common data services, which provides a data set which is common across and allows you to build in a very different way, is an example of that. Force.com in the Salesforce world have the same principle, and those types of platforms are really helpful when you're thinking about these areas in order to support that. And I think suppliers who are starting to think about that ecosystem approach and building platforms in that way rather than the traditional database model is really helpful in exploring that. So, but unfortunately, David, there is no single answer to that, and there is no single system at the moment.
Thank you both. And yes, someone has posted to say, yeah, well, the short answer to that is no. And And I think it's important to not just dismiss it as no, because the technology does exist. But as Nathan says, they've got to, the technology suppliers need to open up and need to become more modern in the way that they are approaching integration with other applications, other opportunities, other fintechs that might provide you with the service that you require. And that is happening. It is happening for sure. It's just not there right now. So I'm going to move on to a question about scale, and this is something which I imagine is on a number of people's minds when they're looking at this. They're saying this is a big piece of work to undertake a digital strategy. We're only a small organisation, and one of the answers we had in our survey was when we said, do you have an IT strategy? One of the answers that we put in there was, no, we're too small. It doesn't relate to us, which was a bit of a trick answer, because a digital strategy is important, whether you are small, whether you are a two-person team, or whether you are the biggest credit union in the country. But I'd like to pass the question over to Nathan first, and then Paul to pick up. And so the question is, what work have the agencies done to support smaller credit unions than those presenting today? We struggle with capacity and undertake this level of project work, and to move away from dependency on suppliers. So Nathan, would you like to just talk about how this type of methodology or this approach could apply on a pragmatic and practical level for a smaller organisation?
Yeah, so although we've kind of gone on a bit of a whistle-stop route through digital maturity, there's plenty out there. So we do a lot of work actually with small charities, which would be akin in terms of that challenge. And I think it's about having the right type of conversations to start with and getting that thinking right. So, it doesn't need to be about building a lengthy document. Sometimes some of that work is purely, 4 slides in a PowerPoint deck, and one's got an idea of direction and principles and some broad thematics in order to help at the size and scale of the charity or CFI that you are. So I would just say it doesn't need to be overwhelmingly large. It's purely a question of, have you thought about it and do you understand where you're going? If your business strategy is, for example, to maintain growth or to be able to enable access to services online, or to enable better conversion rates because of high wastage on processing applications offline, whatever it might be, it's about understanding that aspect, saying, okay, how might we achieve that? The interest bit I guess on the support question, we do a lot of work where we would bring in, I guess, when it's on discounted rates, it's about using flexible time. But I'd also go back to James's point, where it's just about opening conversations. You don't necessarily need to spend money per se, but it's about having good conversations with people and just spending that time to do that. And no one, in my view, is ever going to turn around and say no, but it's having conversations potentially with people who are not selling new products, I think is really important. Too often the conversations are, let's go and chat to all the suppliers. They're just interested in trying to convert a sale rather than talking to other organizations and other fintechs, which might be more in those spaces, which is really helpful. And so places like FinTech West here in the southwest of England is a great place to begin some of that dialogue as well. And there's there across the country, obviously, in terms of where they're placed as well.
And Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I just to echo the comments that Nathan has made. Constituent is principally set up to demystify digital. I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes when the terms come forward, it feels as if it's a different language. And I suppose what we try and do is to break that down into the relevant components. So every journey is different. It has to be tailored around the organisation. I would also, reiterate the point that Jonathan made that this isn't about scale. Every organisation needs a digital journey. Why? Because your members or customers that you're trying to reach out, engage with, or target, they're very much aware that they're in the digital age and their expectations will be aligned to that. So it's actually understanding that. So a lot of the techniques that perhaps Nathan and I would support you with would be around how you engage, and then actually trying to assess how that fits into available technology. So it's very much about also making sure you make the right investment decisions, not that you actually spend the money that you're spending perhaps now. So it might be the case that you could put an investment case together that you're actually able to access the technology you need, but actually not necessarily dedicate the right, dedicate further funds towards it. And again, just to conclude on that point, is that if you listen just directly to the suppliers, they will certainly deliver what they think you need, or even worse, actually what they want to sell you. Whereas if you've got control of the discussion and the dialogue and have that clear set of business requirements that you're looking for, you'll be far more informed. And that's what we try and support the teams to do in the credit unions and the financial institutions we work with.
Can I just come in there and just add to that? I would say I agree with both Nathan and Paul there. I'd also say to keep it simple, so that your business, and I think there's an opportunity there for maybe some collaboration there. If you think about sort of going to, a new supplier, even if it's to help you with the digital strategy as well. I'd say there's work, there's collaboration out there, and we can certainly help each other in this as well. She wants to get that across.
And thank you, Karen. And that actually moves very neatly into a question which came through. Are there forums where credit unions can get together, work together collaboratively to build their digital strategies? And this is something that we're looking at Fairfield Finance as well, as to whether there is a way of collaborating and maybe running some joint workshops where we can help to develop strategies for the smaller credit unions who won't necessarily want to engage on a full-scale basis. I'm just going to move to a question on from Tim Rooney. With large percentage number of applicants not being successful and the service being remote, what focus is made on helping that declined population to understand the reasons why? It's something that's lost as a result of going digital as opposed to face-to-face. I'm going to pass this one over to James. James, you're on mute.
Thanks, Jonathan. I realised this time. Thanks, Tim, for the question as well. So I think in terms of the danger, I guess, of being wholly digital and the impact that has on the level of personalisation and contact that you can have with customers or members, there are things that we can do to make sure that that danger doesn't materialise. So making sure that we are following up declines with a proper personalised response to let people know why they haven't been successful, and giving them in particular key steps that they can use to help themselves in future is really important. There's also ways of using the tech to help as well. So one of the things that's on our roadmap and subject to resources in the next 6 to 9 months, we'll be putting this in place, is to have a web chat facility that integrates very tightly with our core CRM platform, which we've moved to, and which allows video chat without needing the member themselves to have any particular client. They'll be able to do the video chat as long as they're on an appropriate device through the chat that's integrated with Dynamics, and that will allow us to do that face-to-face contact just in a way that's remote. We now cover quite a large geographical area, so all the way from Gloucestershire in the north right down to Dorset. We cover a very big area, so it's not really feasible to do face-to-face in the same way as we've always done it, by asking people to come into one office in Bristol or even into a number of offices around the patch. But really it's trying to find ways to do those sorts of things that matter to people, but do them in a way that's supported by the digital tools that are out there. Hope that's some help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Well, time has flown by, and we've reached the 11:15 end of the webinar. But I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's joined this and your engagement through the questions. Massive thank you to all of our speakers, to James, to Karen, Paul, and Nathan. And also to those who've been working behind the scenes, Deborah, James, Temi, who have made this happen today. So big thank you to everyone, and this is the start of the conversation. We will be communicating the contact to the ebook. Please do email Nathan if you want a copy, but that will be made available from tomorrow. Sorry, not tomorrow, Friday. Sorry, just put you on the spot there, Nathan. But thank you to everyone for your participation in today, and we will keep you informed with the next modules as they are developed. Thanks again. Bye.